Today on the Worldview Bros, we talk about our favorite fiction writer, J.R.R. Tolkien. Tolkien is, in fact, the greatest fiction writer of the 20th century. Looked down upon by the intelligentsia, he is the hobbit of true literature. We'll talk about him today on the Worldview Bros.
Good morning, my fellow human beings. How are you doing? Welcome to the Worldview Bros. I'm Sal. This is my brother Jim, a.k.a. Slippin' Jimmy, a.k.a. Jedi Master, a.k.a. Butterbeard, a.k.a. Brogo Baggins, a.k.a. Adukinator. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. You did just forget the Sleepless, Jim the Sleepless.
Yeah. I think we can all relate to that. Yeah.
It doesn't require any explanation. But what I kind of figured is the less you sleep, actually, the more stuff you can do.
Yeah.
It's crappy stuff. You do crappy stuff, but you do more of it.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like you hit this point where you're just like, you could go on forever, and it's just like the state of like almost like. Maybe this is like what a zombie would be like.
Yeah.
You
have to embrace it. Yeah.
So thanks for joining us again. We have a lot planned for you today. We have all things Tolkien. Again, one of the greatest 20th century. The greatest. 20th
Yes,
century
he's the best
author. So a lot of great stuff. Just talking about fantasy. Talking about fairies, fairy stories, right? Like fairies, like with wings.
Well, we'll get into that. Yeah.
Talk a little bit of Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, a lot of great stuff. We have a fun game for us planned. We have a top 5, Jim. Jim's got our top 5 today and our classic hate and like. Let's get into it a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, Jim. I know for you, there's a personal tie, especially. And then I guess for me, there's a personal tie via you, which has always been inspiring for me,
right.
Especially with Tolkien, with his stories directly related to Lord of the Rings. He's made a big impact, I'm sure, on a lot of people's lives with the work he's done. So
yeah, no, I mean, I love this man. I mean, if there's anybody who's had the biggest impact, a single person who has had the biggest impact in my life, would be Tolkien for sure.
Yeah,
and I think I've mentioned before that I started getting curious about things when I started studying physics in high school, and in fact, I am a physics teacher. And
way.
Yeah, and so I had this. I don't know. I had this thing in my mind that I wanted to figure things out in the world, right? And so I figure, well, dang, if I want to know the truth about things, then I need to go into science. Certainly, physics. It looks like physics describes what the world is, what reality is. And it does to a large extent. What I didn't realize is that it's not going to be able to account for all of reality as it truly is. This is an ancient distinction. of philosophy. So philosophy means love of wisdom or love of the truth, seeking out the truth, living your life according to seeking out that truth, as we've talked about before. Mm-hmm. But the ancients said that there's natural philosophy, and then there's philosophy generally. So what does it mean to say that there's natural philosophy? Well, natural philosophy means the study of the world as we're able to see it with our senses, with our physical senses. In other words, physical reality. We've always had the distinction since antiquity that there is a reality that is not simply physical, that doesn't pertain to just the physical senses, but that is metaphysical. Mm-hmm. So, and these are really the precepts of reason, like when you consider the logic of anything, really. For instance, what's the simplest two-dimensional shape? Well, the simplest two-dimensional shape is a triangle. And, where did that come from? Did we run an investigation? Did we, did we run a lab to figure that out? No, it's a precept that we engage. Mm-hmm. We engage it with our reason. It's a metaphysical reality that is not subject to physical perception. Anyway, the point is, I didn't really start thinking about that until I started reading Tolkien, and kind of like in a way that I didn't realize at the time. So,
would you say that this was kind of like a spiritual realm kind of opening up, or even just more practical, just like good versus evil kind of? I mean, that's still in the spiritual realm, right?
No, right.
But without getting like super deep into it, or how was that for you, or how would you describe that?
No, good question. I mean, I would say that the spiritual realm incorporates like these precepts of reason as well. Mm-hmm. Like they're metaphysical realities, right?
Yeah.
And no, that's right. I mean, reading his stories, you ask yourself questions like, what is courage? What is beauty? Mm-hmm. What is goodness? What is goodness? What is sacrifice?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, we tend to think, I think our modern prejudices are that these questions are purely subjective. We just dismiss them as subjective. We say, oh, that's subjective, right? And it's just subject to everybody's interpretation. Yeah, because we've embraced this postmodernism like hook, line, and sinker, Yeah. We have this idea that we just make these realities, and that if everybody's able to make this reality for themselves, then there's really actually nothing that would connect us. That means that we would all be kind of ships drifting away into nothingness.
Yeah.
Which is one of the pictures, of course, that we see in Tolkien's novels. But
and see, I feel like we're going to get into this a little bit, talking about fantasy and just fairy stories, and we talked a little bit before this, talked about the question of like criticism as far as when it came to he's writing things that aren't real, right?
Yes,
and I think something that where my mind goes straight to that when thinking, okay, this isn't real. Okay, it might not be real, but who in their right mind has like never compared themselves to something that was unreal, like a fictional character or something like that, who has not learned. Like, man, I can't even tell you how many things I've learned from reading some of the best Gandalf quotes, or some of the best, Sam quotes, or whatever it is, And I think, I don't know. Again, we'll get more into it.
No, you bring up this point. Like, let me jump in. Like, there's so much prejudice in our language too that we're unaware of. I mean, not to make too much of a fuss about it, but the very fact that we call his kind of writing like fiction. So we separate writing into nonfiction and fiction. You know what? What if I told you that you can read a fiction book that actually has a lot more nonfiction than a nonfiction book?
Yeah. No, it's
you actually can have a lot of fiction in a nonfiction book and a lot of nonfiction in a fiction. What am I talking about? I'm talking about describing reality.
Yeah.
Okay? Just because it does deal with elves and dwarves and such doesn't mean that you're not engaging reality at a probably deeper level than you would if you read I don't know, like something random that would be nonfiction, like I don't know, like a political book from a candidate running for president or something like that. That's going to have like really nothing of intrinsic value in it. Probably.
Yeah. I think a lot of there's a lot of reality, a lot of truth, and a lot of things that we've even been talking about. And, in Tolkien's writings, his themes, his stories, and so which leads into fantasy and leads into these fairy stories and this way of writing that he has. That we should get into.
No, right. I mean, let me cut to the chase about like why Tolkien is. By the way, all my life I've always said Tolkien. And I keep seeing more and more, getting more and more verification that the correct pronunciation is Tolkien.
Yeah.
And so I've been trying, and sometimes I'll do it like halfway, right? Tolkien.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know.
Tolkien.
No, it's Tolkien. It's Tolkien. So, I want to prove to people that I can fix the way I do things.
What's his origin? Is that like...
It's a German name.
Tolkien.
Even though he's like...
And yes, if it's IE, then it's Tolkien.
Right. Yeah. It is. Sure. It is a German name, even though he's like hyper English. He takes great pride in his English heritage. So I don't know. I think he's kind of weird about it.
I think it's okay to say
weird
Tolkien.
About it. Okay.
I think if he's like...
I'm going to say Tolkien. But,
okay.
It's all
I'll
good.
Say both.
Anyway, what's so special?
I'll leave it as a surprise. If one moment I'll say Tolkien. Now it feels wrong to say Tolkien.
Yeah.
It feels wrong.
Yeah.
I like the in between Tolkien.
No, but dude, what's so special about him is, first of all, a guy is a brainiac. All right, I like to say that Tolkien is to language, and he was a philologist. So a philologist is one who studies language, sort of in a technical sense, actually, looking at the history of how languages arise. And so anyway, he is to philology, he is to language what Albert Einstein is to physics. There's no doubt about that. Brainiac dude. And he really kind of brings about fantasy in a way that it hadn't been done before. Not to say that he invented fantasy. No, but it might be
modern fantasy.
It might be nearer the truth to say that he invents the fantasy novel as we understand
what we understand and what we know. Yeah.
So, I mean, prior to him, if somebody said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to read a fantasy story," they're kind of thinking a story that you would read to your kids, like Peter Pan and this fairy, like Tinkerbell, like this little tiny creature flying around. We had come to the place where we relegate fantasy to the children's sort of nursery room kind of thing,
right.
And Tolkien had a sense that this was not true in the past. Like he kind of grabbed this thread and worked it all the way back. One point of comparison, one way we can compare him is actually with the Brothers Grimm. So very famously, the Brothers Grimm did kind of the hard work of looking back at old fantasy stories from the past in Germany and kind of bringing them back to life. And now they actually kind of added a lot in themselves as well. Well, so Tolkien wanted to create that project for old British stories.
Right, yeah.
So, however, there's a lot that's been lost. So he was looking at stories like Beowulf, but he knew that there were a lot more that existed of that type. Now, as a philologist, he looked at the kind of looking at words that would be used in these tales, and trying to figure out the history of it. So his job is actually very similar to what it would be for an archaeologist. So an archaeologist might find, maybe they're digging around in Egypt somewhere. Maybe they find some ruins of some pyramids, but maybe they don't find the whole thing. Maybe they just find a fragment of it, and a lot of it has been lost. But based on their knowledge, they kind of recreate what that city would have looked like in the first place.
Right.
So they'll kind of draw it out and like, oh, are you just making that up? Well, no, actually, I'm kind of looking at the history of it, and I'm digging into it to figure out what it might have looked like. And that's that actually is the genesis of his project. His project, his stories, The Lord of the Rings, and previous to that, The Silmarillion, is actually, he's kind of creating this edifice for the languages that he was creating.
Yeah.
And he saw the languages that he created as sort of like hypothetical languages that could have been the root of English, actually, going forward. So he has this like brainiac idea of constructing these stories. And this is why his stories are at a technical level so incredible. Because he really is creating this huge universe in which the stories take place.
Yeah.
It's not like a random fantasy novel that you would pick up from the bookstore. And like the author, maybe it's a cool story and everything, but he just kind of spent 1 year and it just came straight out of his mind. Just kind of these names that sound good, just kind of made up. This is why I can't read fantasy novels nowadays, because they don't have the depth. They don't have the roots, kind of like looking at a tree. A tree can be very beautiful, but then you look at the roots below it, and it can be like even like the size of the tree on the outside, or think of like an iceberg.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that iceberg. And then you look below and it's this huge thing, like it's bigger on the bottom than it is at the top. That's what's true about Tolkien's stories.
Yeah.
The roots are bigger than the actual story.
Right, exactly.
And when that's true, like you kind of get immersed in that world and you're, it's an incredible experience. And it's an experience that you can't recreate with what shall we say, with lower tier fantasy writers.
No, definitely, because it's the complete opposite. The roots, it's rooted in something that's not really as, there's not a whole lot of truth to it, or there's no, or maybe it's just plain old, kind of like with films, and how films now are just about the box office, and films are just like the bang, bang, bang films, right? It's like, how can we get as many people to come watch this, or how can we get as many people to read this? Rather than having like those deep roots of like, how am I going to, show the beauty of human nature in this?
Yeah.
Or how am I going to, show how sacrifice is, is something that's very important, and it's, part of who we are.
Right.
Things like that.
Let me tell you something. Like Tolkien didn't have the idea that he was going to write these stories in order to publish them.
Yeah.
He had to get dragged into publishing them.
Yeah.
He got dragged into doing it. Mm-hmm. Right. He was writing the stories as a as a brainy kind of experience for himself, just trying to teach himself like how languages work.
Yeah.
Seriously,
definitely.
like the way he thinks about it is that every word has a story, right? So he decided that he wanted to create these languages, the Elvish language, the language of dwarves, and so forth.
Yeah.
It's like, well, they need a history.
Yeah.
This language needs a history, so I guess I need to write the history for these languages.
Like when you think about it, with this movie coming out, like if it's what we've heard. Like it'll be okay, but like if I think of the potential of an actual Tolkien movie about his life, it seems like it would be really cool. Yeah, and kind of showing his thought process of writing this language and just I guess the process itself. I think would be cool to see. But I don't know if it's going to be so much that way. We haven't seen it. So.
Yeah, I've kind of heard that. What I've heard so far is that if you're a real Tolkien fan, you're probably not going to like it that much. But if you don't really know about him, it'll be like, oh yeah, that's a cool movie. It's inspirational or something like that. I think they're probably going to be short on getting to the true questions that motivate him. That's what I think. Yeah. But I can't say I need to watch it. So
right, yeah.
I will. We'll watch it.
Yeah.
So, but here's the key of what fantasy is. What Tolkien says about it is that when we make a story, he actually doesn't say that we create a story. He's very specific about this. The key of fantasy for him is that we don't create a story. We can only sub-create a story. Okay? To say that you create something, if you think about it, is a very intense statement. Like, seriously, I'm going to create a story? Like, I didn't draw from anywhere? Like if I give a theme in my story, I just pull that out from nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, think about the discussions we've had before. That's impossible. We cannot give meaning to life, right? We don't make our own meaning.
Right.
Meaning is there.
Yeah.
The universe is as it is. Being is as it is.
Yeah.
What is. Think about this, okay? So that's what Tolkien says. As a story writer, you're actually a sub-creator. So for Tolkien, a fantasy novel is really like the epitome of all art, because it's true that in a fantasy novel, you're kind of creating a new world. Yeah. But we want to say sub-creating a new world.
Yeah.
So you're going to build a society, maybe even a fantastical race of beings like elves and like dwarves, which, you know, they've kind of been around for a long time. Like there's something about like reaching out and thinking about hypothetical creatures, you know?
Yeah.
Because you want, the imagination is such that you want to see, oh, well, maybe life could have been this way, or maybe society could live in this fashion. But when you sub-create the way that they're going to live, it's only going to be satisfying if it rings true in a more fundamental sense. So what Tolkien says is that the story needs to make intrinsic sense. It's not like you can just make anything up and that it would be fulfilling, or that it would ring true, or that it would be appealing.
Yeah.
Because you can just make up, you know, stupid stuff that has no bearing in reality in a more fundamental sense.
Yeah.
So, like when we read his stories, let me try to be more specific. Reading his stories in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, it's like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, I guess there's no such thing as hobbits. I guess there's no such thing as elves and so on. But the whole story totally made sense in a moral kind of way. Like the decisions that Bilbo makes, the way that he acts, the courage that we see in Aragorn, right? The sacrifice that we see in Sam, the wisdom that we see in Gandalf. Is all that fantastical? Is all that nonfiction? No. It's very true. Yeah. And it's very remarkable. And here's the other thing that Tolkien says. And by the way, when I say that he says this, he really explains his craft in a very important essay that everybody listening to this right now should actually stop right now and go read. His essay is called On Faerie Stories. And this is like where he's the most open about like what he's all about, like what his stories are about. On Faerie Stories. So we'll put a link in the description. But again, so what he says is that the story is going to be successful. We know that the fantasy writer is successful if the reader desires that there's a certain desirability to the world that is being portrayed, right? Because if it's desirable, that means that it's resonating with what is good, right? So, okay, sure, it's elves, it's dwarves, it's hobbits. Oh, they're not real. Okay, right. But the whole point is that we're looking at the story taking place in this different realm, and we can see what may be true about it. So yeah. It's a better way to analyze the deeper realities in nature. Yeah. If I make a story that is just about us, like in our everyday life, it becomes a little bit more complicated to reach into those deeper realities, because we're kind of distracted in a way of things that are already, he calls it this certain triteness that occurs with non-fantastical stories. We think we get it because it's the world in which we live. And so we are not compelled in a way to reach into the things that make the story true. I guess that's a better way to put it. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's fantastical. Oh, okay, well, let me reach in and figure out what is true about it. Yeah. So exactly. It's an easier way to reach into the deeper questions that we ask ourselves in life. Mm-hmm. Here's the... I sometimes wonder, and this is connected to fantasy. Mm-hmm. This is kind of the question that Tolkien is trying to grapple with. I sometimes wonder why it is that things are the way they are. I know this is like super like in-depth here, right? Uh-huh. Like, why is it that we even exist, right? We wake up in the morning, we get up out of bed, we should be astounded by every single thing that we see. We walk outside and we see the sun. gosh, why, the sun, and like Tolkien talks about this in his essay, like, oh, it's a yellow sun. I wonder, what if it had been a green sun? Mm-hmm. That thought, to say, oh, that could have been a green sun. You're now in the fantastical realm. You are now in what he calls Faerie. Faerie is this, he calls it the perilous land.
Yeah.
It's the land where you kind of imagine things in a different way. And why is that important? Because it actually makes all the more wonderful the fact that we actually have a sun that is yellow.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of a weird thing. If we just kind of wake up every day and we see the same yellow sun every day, what happens? What's the phrase? Familiarity breeds, have you heard this, Al? Familiarity breeds contempt. Have you heard that phrase?
Yeah, I've heard that. Mm-hmm.
Guys, listen. Familiarity breeds contempt. We're done here. Let's pack it up. Let's go. That's the point. Think about it. Follow that train of thought. Familiarity breeds contempt. Exactly. So what you do is you go and write a story about a green sun. Right? I sound like a crazy person right now.
No, I like where you're going with this.
You go and you write a story about a green sun and purple grass and all this other stuff. Now, when we write it, we're going to try to look at other deeper truths and such. Okay, yeah. That's true. But the point is, okay, here's the point. The job of the fantasy writer is for people to fall in love with that world.
Yeah.
Because when you go into that world and you see the green sun and the purple grass mm-hmm. and the scarlet trees, and you see them for the first time and you're amazed.
Yeah.
And you say, "Oh, wow, look at this green sun. It's so beautiful. Look at this world. It's beautiful." Kind of like when you first were aware of this world. Yeah. And you looked at this world and you fell in love with this world. Uh-huh. And you wonder, why is this world the way that it is? Yeah. Why is being the way that it is? It's an astounding truth.
Yeah. And it's,
so then going to that world, you kind of take a break from this one. Mm-hmm. So that when you come back to this one, you see it with fresh eyes again, and you keep a state of wonder. Mm-hmm. What Tolkien is trying to do to the reader is to reawaken this primal thing that is in our heart, that we should be in wonder at the world. Mm-hmm. And one of the best ways to do that is to that the fantasy writer is doing us a solid here in helping us to kind of keep that sense fresh. That's his artistry, and that's why he's so amazing.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think that leads into goes back to kind of creating a world, right? And it's so great to see a creation like that. Yeah. But only because it has evidence and it has, the roots of our own creator. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And those stories, his stories are not beautiful because he made them up.
Yes.
They're beautiful because he was aware of the beauty of our world uh-huh. and wanted to subcreate it into this world.
Yeah.
So, I think that's really cool.
No, right.
And it could lead into then, we talk again about us being created in the image of God.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And that's cool. Yeah. Like that's when when you have art that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. Like that's when you really see, whether it's a song, whether it's a story, whether it's whatever. You kind of start to see how we are sons and daughters, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't want to get super into that, but it's, I don't know. It just gives me chills thinking about it.
No, I know, and that you make that point that you're only going to fall in love with that world if there's something that is actually true at a deepest level, mm-hmm. right? And that's really the point. So, fantasy writer, fiction writer. No, I don't know. I wouldn't call it fiction. Mm-hmm. I prefer his term, which is fantasy or a fairy story.
Yeah.
A fairy story is a story that you go into what he calls the perilous realm, where you awaken a sense of wonder. And it's not a false thing. It's not a fictional thing. It's a very, very real thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
awesome. All right, so let's take a break and get into our top 5. We haven't done top 5 in a little bit. So.
I know, yeah. We had to skip it a couple times.
Yeah,
but
let's get into it. You got our top 5 for us.
Yeah, so I want to do top 5 board games. I'm a board game fanatic, and I used to be a Magic the Gathering fanatic, but that was just too dangerous for me. Like, I do have to say, like, if I just have a favorite game, something that I could just lose myself in, it is, in fact, I mean, you know this, Al, MTG, Magic the Gathering, but I had to give it up, guys. It was like a drug for me, seriously. And, you know, sometimes when you see something like just kind of taking over your life a little bit, dude, reassess. And if that's a temptation for you, dude, just cut it off, you know. If you're not going to be able to handle it,
especially someone like that,
yeah, because
certain things are different. You know?
No, I know. The thing about a board game is like you're not constantly thinking, because with MTG, you're constantly thinking about your decks, right?
Yeah.
So, dude, I would be like, you know, like when we would give like a star test or something like that, or a you know, pre-SAT or something like that. You're supposed to, you're walking around and like you have nothing to do, dude. I'm running through my decks, dude. I'm going to put 4 of these. I'm going to put 4 of these. I'm going to put 4 of these. Okay, and I'm going to have to.
This combination.
I know this combination, and I'm going to have to battle these kinds of decks. So this is going to be successful with these types. So watch, Magic the Gathering. I don't recommend it if you're kind of like, if you have this hyper tendency to win. So anyway, my favorite board games then. Board games are way safer for me. I'm okay, but I warn you, if we play, like, I'm going at you. So that's my mentality with
probably
games.
One of the best board game players I know. It's crazy.
So number 5, this is really mostly for sentimental reasons. It's kind of like the board game that got me into board games, and that's Risk. So it's a classic, you know. It still involves luck, which, in my opinion, the best board games are the ones that deal with luck the least, because it should be about your prowess and your, you know, your
I feel like games have evolved now, though, from Risk.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the point, yeah. So Risk is the only one on my list that is kind of like old school, kind of traditional.
Okay,
and
that's fine. I can respect that.
Okay. So number 4, I actually am going to cheat because I have like these 2 games in mind that are similar in kind of the way they go about. They're games where you're playing as a team, and that would be Codenames. Codenames is a really cool game.
That's a surprise to me.
Yeah, I'm putting Codenames number 4, but I'm putting it tied with Hanabi. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with either of these, but they're excellent games to play as a team. The cool thing with Codenames is you can have 2 teams, and it almost doesn't matter how large the teams are. Yeah. You have one code giver, and then everybody else is on your team, and you're trying to get your team to guess words that you're going to have on a grid. Anyway, look it up. Codenames is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And Hanabi is really great. So our brother-in-law introduced Hanabi to me, and it's really cool. You're kind of holding out cards, but you can't see them, but the rest of the players see them. And you're trying to kind of play the cards in order. Actually, it's just numbers. The cards are just numbers with colors. Like, it's super simple. But you're
able to give clues.
Yeah.
Or, you know, to tell people, but you can only say, like, the number or color. So you can say you have these 3 are red, or these 3 are 2s, you know, and you're trying to get each other to put down the 5 stacks of 5, you know, and the perfect score is 25.
I know. I love the I love the simplicity of it, and yet it's so complicated. Like, we have the goal to play a perfect round, which was what, 25? Oh yeah, 25 points, right? 5 by 5.
The other night.
We got 23. 25 is a perfect score, and it's like impossible.
I could play that like until I would play it until I get 25.
Do you think we'll ever get 25?
I don't know, but I would be willing to take a whole night to do it.
Yeah.
Like that's how much like it's like gambling to me.
Yeah.
You know, like if I were to get into gambling, it'd be dangerous for me.
Dude, that's a good gambling game.
Yeah.
That could be
right.
Could be a good gambling game. Okay.
All right, let's get to number 3.
So number 3, now we're getting to the games that I really love the most. And again, they're called like the German style games. Mm-hmm. They're games where you're trying to gain victory points. And it's all about like using your resources correctly and collecting resources at the right time, making the right decision. No luck. 0 luck. If you win the game on these next 3 games, it's because you were the best. I like that. Mm-hmm. So my number 3 is Agricola. Now, this is a pretty intense game. It's going to take a long time to set up. But again, it's all about like you collect your cows and you collect the wood and you collect all this stuff. And you have to do it in the right order, with the right timing. And you can eventually be the greatest farmer, because you will have all your animals and all the crops that you got and everything else. Mm-hmm. Number 2, very similar to it, but kind of simpler, is Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is very similar to Agricola. I like Puerto Rico better, Sal, because it's first of all, it's quicker to set up. There's a simplicity to it that I think is very elegant. Agricola is a little bit sprawling. There's a little bit more complexity to it. Yeah. Puerto Rico is simple, but it's still going to be tough to win. You really have to play your cards right or your moves right. So, but number 1, guys, best board game of all time. You might take issue with me that it's not a board game, but I actually say that it is a board game. So this called Dominion. Dominion is my favorite game.
Because technically it's a deck building game.
It's a deck building game. You don't really have like a board, but I see no difference between it and a board game. The reason I wouldn't call it it's not a card collecting game, because you don't just kind of collect different cards and build your own deck. It's like whatever cards are available in play, that's what you're going to play with.
Yeah, but I mean, you are collecting cards and you can have different combinations of cards.
No, I agree, but you're making the collection at the moment, not previously. So
again, I'm just being a little bit more devil's advocate, because I think it's a great game too. But
so it is amazing, because there are, of course, different expansions to it, and you can kind of combine them. Well, I guess I should explain. The point is you're going to have like 10 stacks of cards in the middle. And you're able to kind of purchase card by card as you go in turns.
Yeah.
So you keep building a deck for yourself that can become more and more efficient. But the point is, it's always just going to be 10 that you choose from, and you kind of set it up at the beginning of the game. And you can set it up with different combinations from different expansions, but whatever you're going to have there is the basis for the game at that point. Mm-hmm. So every time you play Dominion, it's like a new game.
I like that. I think that's so cool. I would put it up there for me too. I don't know about number 1, but it's definitely in the top 5. Okay. Something that like I just grew up, I should say, just playing through college. I fell in love with, and all my roommates and friends can attest to this. Well, there's 2 of them that I would say that are really great. The father of all German games to me is Catan. Yeah. Settlers of Catan is just, I don't know. Like, I just love that game. I even have the app, and I'll play it on my phone sometimes. Yeah. I think that game is just really great. I mean, there's some that, like you said, like Agricola, that's really great. That's a little bit more, not complicated, but just there's more to it. Yeah. And Puerto Rico even. But I think Catan, it's just you're settling, building roads, and the way you can collect. And there's different ways to win, but it's limited. There might be more ways to win in other games, but I think it's great. All right, so let's get into talking about more specific, some of the great stories we like. Tolkien stories like The Hobbit.
And I love The Hobbit because, and this is also true in The Lord of the Rings. I mean, the kind of the structure of the story is you have Bilbo Baggins, and who is he? If you look at the way the hobbits live, they're very much kind of like the way that kind of Tolkien lived his life. Like he's, he likes his home, and he likes kind of an easy life where you're kind of enjoying nature and but you're kind of immersed in your own world.
Yeah.
And what happens? Well, there's a knock at the door, and it's this wizard Gandalf. And Bilbo is essentially tempted to go out on an adventure.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the temptation to go out into Faerie.
Yeah.
And to go out into this different world. Yeah. And Bilbo's like, oh, I don't know if that's for me. I'm kind of comfortable right here.
Content.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. The familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah.
But you know what? He does have this desire to explore, and he does have that sense of wonder that he wants to reawaken, right? What does Bilbo keep saying? That he wants to see the mountains, right? Yeah. So he's tempted out of his home.
Yeah.
Right? That's the whole Baggins versus Took part of his family line, He has the adventuresome part, but he also has like the homely part,
Yeah.
So he goes out into this adventure, and what's interesting is the road that leads over to Bag End is the same road that crosses over the Misty Mountains, and it then goes to the Lonely Mountain, and where Smaug is, and where he's going to have all of his adventures. And the point is, it's all connected, and you can experience you can experience the wonder that Faerie brings into your life, even in this day and age, even in the day and age for Bilbo, even like where he was living.
That you're talking about,
Yeah. So, and by the time he comes back to Hobbiton kind of like with renewed eyes, like that was an awesome adventure. And now I'm going to live that adventure in my life, and I'm going to continue living with this sense of wonder, with this sense of adventure.
Yeah.
It's a very beautiful thing.
Yeah. No, I think it's awesome. And it, again, like, I think going back to how this was meant as a kid's story. I mean, yes, it is, but I think it's clear that there's a lot of things that we can take from it too. And if I think of it in a sense of like, Christ tells us, to, I guess, be more childlike, right? And that doesn't mean like innocent and like, because like kids tell the truth and stuff. No, kids are liars. And stuff, but I think it's this, again, going back to the, being awed by something.
Being awed by something. That's right.
Even if it's a small thing.
Exactly, dude.
Even if it's just, I don't know, having an encounter with nature, right? And seeing how beautiful it is. Wow. Yeah. And it's this idea of like, maybe you live in Colorado. I love Colorado because I love to see the mountains. But if I lived in Colorado, at a certain point, I probably would just see the mountains and keep walking, right?
That's right.
Unlike if I stop and really look, I'm like, wow, oh my goodness. So I think these stories, these children's stories do the same. You can stop and really see, wow, like this is a great story. I can take something from it.
No, that's right. You live in Colorado, and then maybe what you should do is you should go to a really cool desert. I mean, in the Sahara or something like that, and see the beauty of a desert.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And then you go to, I don't know, you go to Alaska, and you see the beauty there.
But then you go home.
And then you go home, and it's like, whoa,
wow, oh my gosh.
Now, if you live in Texas, I don't know what you're going to do. I mean, I think you're screwed at that point.
All right. Awesome. Well, we're going to get some more, and we're going to be talking more about Tolkien in some episodes to come. We're going to, spend some time talking about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And it'll be exciting.
Definitely.
But let's get into our next segment, which is Hate and Like.
All right, so Sal, I have something that I really hate, and I think I just have to. You know how it is with YouTube, like you kind of get tempted to watch something, and then you're kind of like in this string of kind of videos that you watched. Mm-hmm. I'm not proud of that. I don't think Tolkien would be proud of me for doing that. But I've been seeing a lot of just like basketball stuff. And what is this deal with, and this isn't only with basketball. I've seen it with like basketball and with soccer and some other stuff, where a dude that's apparently like a pro at it, like a pro basketball player or a pro soccer player, dresses up as an old dude and then goes to like a park, and then everybody's amazed at how great he is. Why is that a thing? That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. Do you know what I'm talking? You've seen this, right? Of course
I have. Yeah.
Dude,
there's a whole
explain to me. The Drew, Dr. Drew, Uncle Drew, Uncle Drew. What's the point?
Well, I guess Uncle Drew is actually old, but whatever.
I don't get why that's a thing. Like, what's the takeaway?
Again, I think it's the initial like, whoa, I didn't expect this old guy to be really good. Right, and then after that, obviously, it's like, okay, this is a show.
Yeah, but he wasn't actually an old guy. Like, he was a pro dressed up as an old guy.
Jim, it's the initial. He was an old guy. Everyone thinks he's old. Yes. So he walks in like, and then it's the initial like, and then he makes it or he dunks, and you're like, whoa, this old guy just did that.
But again,
I think it's we live in a world now where being viral, having a viral video or having a viral moment is what people want and live for.
Well, that sucks.
I agree.
Because the takeaway is what?
I'm trying to help you understand.
No, but here's my point. The takeaway is what? If there is an actual old guy at the basketball park, I should be like, oh, he could probably beat me at basketball. I shouldn't judge like this 90-year-old dude. I shouldn't judge like he could probably beat me. Because that one guy who was dressed like an old guy, who was actually an NBA pro player, completely destroyed me. Oh, but he wasn't actually an old guy. He was dressed as an old guy. This is so dumb. I can't stand how stupid this is.
Wait, it's
really bugging me.
It's like there's a humiliation to it too in the beginning. But it's like, the moment you see like an old man dunk, it's probably not an old man. So yeah, I agree that's kind of stupid.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I can see this if it were like, I don't know, like, it would make a lot more sense to me actually. Like if it was a girl, perhaps, right? And we can be kind of judgy about that.
Watch yourself, Jim.
But seriously, like it could be, it would be, of course, that a girl could completely beat me up at basketball. And I'll be upfront with you. I'll probably prejudge and like I probably beat that girl at basketball, know. And then if she comes in and like destroys me, then I would see a point to that. It's like I'm going to think twice before I immediately say that I'm going to beat the girl at basketball.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but a 90-year-old guy, come on. I don't know if that's the point they're trying to make.
So you should have the pros dress up like girls.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Maybe. Or have an actual girl that will beat you.
Okay.
I think that proves the point way better. I don't know. I'm so confused right now.
That's a good one. I like that. All right, let's get in. I have a like.
Okay.
Again, we have the playoffs. The NBA playoffs have been going on. If you haven't checked out the deep dive that we had, might not be as relevant anymore now that it's moved on, but still it'd be fun to watch. We'll probably do a finals one before the finals or something. But right now, where it's in the third round of the playoffs, and it's the Warriors versus the Blazers, and then you have Portland versus Golden State, and then there's the Milwaukee Bucks and the Toronto Raptors playing in the Eastern Conference Finals. And my like is actually something that happened, I guess just in general, the whole playoffs have been really entertaining. One of the best ones I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And last weekend there was 2 Game 7s. Kawhi having his huge shot.
I saw that
to take the game and go on to the Eastern Conference Finals. That was incredible. But I have to say, Game 6 of the Rockets Warriors series was one of the best games I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You have KD, Kevin Durant, who got hurt in the game prior to that.
Yeah.
And he got hurt in the third quarter. I almost said the Mavericks.
Oh.
And the Warriors still took that game.
Yeah.
And to see, so my basically is this game and Steph Curry and just the culture of the Warriors and how they have proven everybody wrong. It's not just the fact that they have these stars that they're so good. It's the culture of this team. Steve Kerr, everything as a whole is what makes them this dynasty.
No, it's true. You figure without KD, they're done.
Yeah, and they just destroy, especially after last year with Chris Paul got hurt. Houston probably would have won that if that didn't happen. And the Warriors proved no.
Yeah.
Don't never underestimate the heart of a champion.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. Game 6, they just let them have it. And Steph Curry,
I saw that.
That's his fourth quarter and just that those consecutive 3-point shots that he had. We are seeing history.
And he had a terrible first half.
So cool. If we can get a video of it, we'll show you guys that a couple shots maybe. If not, we'll put a link. But yeah, it was just incredible.
Yeah, he was just 0 for whatever in the first half.
He had 0 points in the first half.
0 points.
And then 33 points in the second half.
That's insane, dude.
Take the game.
You just tell me that. That's crazy.
Seriously, it's history being made, and it's just incredible to see.
That's awesome.
And just...
Also, I hate the Rockets.
In the third round. Yeah, exactly. I don't really like Chris Paul and James Harden.
No.
And but even in this next round, KD's not in it, and Steph Curry is showing that he is one of the all-time top 10 players of all time.
Dang, you think so?
He could. Wow. If they get through this, if they were to sweep the Blazers, and he's already good. I already think he's the best shooter of all time. He can easily be in the conversation of top 10.
Wow.
If he progresses in this way. Gets another title.
Maybe a couple more years at this level.
A couple more years at this level. You could totally make that argument.
Yeah. No,
that's how incredible he is.
Yeah.
And never mind the whole, different eras and stuff like that. No, this is basketball.
Yeah. No, his shot is incredible.
Yeah. So, that's
very cool.
That's what I like.
I like it.
Awesome. All right. Well, so... thank you again for joining us today on the Worldview Bros. Catch us next time, okay? Talking more about Tolkien.
More Tolkien, yeah.
More Tolkien, yeah. Follow us on Twitter. Like our page on Facebook. If you have a question, if you have a concern, whatever you have for us, email us on theworldviewbros@gmail.com. All right? And check out our Instagram.
Oh, yeah,
Jim,
that's right.
Our Instagram.
I'll check it out.
Thank you guys again, and join us next time.
Bye.
What dream to bring them, and the darkness bind them in the land of shelter where the shadows lie. Today on the Worldview Bros, we jump into one of our favorite topics.
You do it in the lateral voice, or one towards her face.
Yeah. On the Worldview Bros. I can't do it. Yeah, on the Worldview Bros. Oh, wait. 7 were given to the... We will discuss the... 9 rings were given to the Dwarven Lords. 7 to mortal men who above all desire power. 3 were given to the Elven Kings. I don't know. but wandering. Wandering. It's a little scary how good that is.